The apprentice collapses on day 3, not from exhaustion, from humiliation. He's been chopping wood for 11 hours, the same motion, the same angle, the same piece of wood. His master watches from the doorway, arms crossed, face unreadable. "I can't do this anymore." The master doesn't move. "You haven't started yet." The apprentice looks up, hands bleeding, shoulders burning. "I've been doing this for 3 days." "No, you've been resisting this for 3 days, and resistance isn't discipline, it's just ego with better posture." The apprentice throws down the axe. "Then what is discipline?" The master finally moves, picks up the axe, hands it back. "Something you don't have, but could, if you survived the next 97 days. Here's what most people don't understand about discipline. It's not something you build through motivation, routines, or inspirational quotes. It's something you forge through conditions so uncomfortable, so repetitive, so devoid of reward, that your mind has no choice but to surrender. The Japanese called this Tanren, duan layan, tempering through fire. Not metaphorically, literally. You place yourself in an environment that breaks weak discipline, impatience, shortcuts, comfort-seeking, and you stay there until what emerges is unbreakable. Not because you've become stronger, but because everything weak has been burned away, and all that's left is the part of you that doesn't need conditions to be perfect, doesn't need motivation to show up, doesn't need to feel like doing it. The boy who couldn't finish anything, 1847. A 14-year-old boy named Kenji is sent to study under a swordsmith named Masamune. Not the legendary Masamune, a descendant, a man who carries the name and the burden of living up to it. Kenji arrives eager, ambitious, convinced he's ready. He's read about sword making, studied the philosophy, visualized himself becoming a master. He thinks knowledge is preparation. It's not. Masamune takes one look at him and says, "You'll quit in 3 days." Kenji is offended. "I've been training for this my whole life." "No, you've been thinking about training. That's different. I'm ready. We'll see." Day 1. Masamune hands Kenji a hammer and points to a pile of iron. "Flatten these into sheets, all of them. Same thickness, no variation." Kenji picks up the hammer, excited. This is it. The beginning. The path to mastery. He strikes the first piece of iron. The sound is satisfying, solid, real. He strikes again and again. 20 minutes in, his arm is tired. 40 minutes in, his shoulder is burning. 2 hours in, he's bored. The excitement is gone. The novelty has evaporated, and all that's left is repetition. The same motion, the same sound, the same mind-numbing, soul-crushing sameness. Kenji looks at the pile of iron, barely touched. Looks at Masamune, who's sitting nearby, sharpening a blade. "How long will this take?" "As long as it takes." "But can't we move on once I understand the basics?" Masamune doesn't look up. "You don't understand anything yet. You're just performing the motion. That's not the same as embodying it." "What's the difference?" "You'll know when you stop asking." Day 2. Kenji wakes up sore, hands blistered, mind screaming at him to quit. But he doesn't. Not because he's disciplined, but because he's proud. He's not going to let some old man be right about him. So he picks up the hammer and starts again. The first hour is agony. Every strike sends pain through his hands, his arms, his shoulders. But he pushes through. This is discipline, he tells himself. This is what it takes. Except it's not. He's not disciplined. He's enduring. And endurance isn't discipline. It's just resistance wearing a different mask. Hour 3. Kenji's mind starts bargaining. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe there's a better technique. Maybe I should ask. He stops, looks at Masamune. "Is there a more efficient way to do this?" Masamune finally looks up. "Yes." Kenji waits. "Don't do it." "What?" "If you're looking for efficiency, you're not ready for mastery. Mastery doesn't care about efficiency. It cares about totality." "I don't understand." "I know. That's why you're still asking questions instead of swinging the hammer." Day 3. Kenji breaks. Not physically, mentally. He wakes up and realizes, I hate this, not the work, the pointlessness of it. He's been hammering iron for 3 days and has nothing to show for it. No sword, no progress, no validation, just blisters and a pile of slightly flatter iron. He walks into the workshop and sees Masamune already working. I can't do this. Masamune doesn't stop hammering. I know. So, what now? Now you decide. Do you leave? Or do you stay and discover what happens when you stop trying to be disciplined and just do the work anyway? Kenji stares at the pile of iron. Every part of him wants to leave. To go back to his books, his theories, his comfortable ideas about mastery. But something makes him pick up the hammer. Not motivation, not inspiration, just stubbornness. The refusal to be the person Masamune predicted he'd be. And he starts hammering. Hour 2. Something shifts. Kenji's mind stops fighting. Not because the work got easier, but because he stopped expecting it to. He's not waiting for the moment when it feels good. He's not imagining the day when he's a master. He's just here. Hammer, iron, strike. Hammer, iron, strike. No story, no resistance, no complaint. Just movement. Masamune notices, stops his own work, watches. And after 10 minutes, he speaks. Now you've started. Kenji doesn't stop hammering. Started what? Tanren, the forging, not of the iron, of you. But here's what Kenji doesn't know yet. The next stage is even harder. And it's the stage where most people quit, even after surviving the first test. The Three Fires, Day 7. Kenji has flattened half the iron pile. His hands have calloused. The motion has become automatic. He's adapted, and adaptation feels like progress. But Masamune sees something else. You're comfortable now. Kenji looks up, surprised. Isn't that good? No, comfort is the first trap. Masamune sets down his tools. Tanren has 3 fires, 3 stages of tempering. Most people quit at the first fire, resistance. You survived that, barely. But the second fire is worse. And most who survive the first burn out in the second. What's the second fire? Competence. The moment you get good enough that it stops hurting. Kenji doesn't understand. Why is that bad? Because competence creates the illusion that you're done, that you've arrived. But true discipline isn't about becoming competent at easy things. It's about remaining relentless when competence makes you soft. Masamune walks to a different pile. Larger, heavier pieces of iron. You've learned to hammer the small pieces. Now you'll hammer these. Kenji looks at them. Each piece is 3 times the size of what he's been working with. For how long? 30 days. That's impossible. My arms can't. Your arms will adapt, or they'll break. Either way, you'll learn what you're actually made of. Day 8. Kenji tries to hammer the larger iron. On the first strike sends shock through his entire body. The weight, the resistance, the sheer density of the material. It's not just harder, it's a different category of difficulty. 20 minutes in, his arms are shaking. 40 minutes in, he has to stop. He looks at Masamune, desperate. I can't do this, it's too much. I know. Then why? Because too much is where discipline is forged. Not in the range you can handle, in the range that breaks your idea of what you can handle. Here's what Masamune understands that Kenji doesn't. Weak discipline is built in comfort. You do the thing when it's convenient, when you're motivated, when conditions are favorable, and the moment conditions change. Difficulty increases, motivation fades, comfort disappears. Your discipline collapses, because it was never tested beyond the threshold of manageable. But unbreakable discipline is forged in the place where manageable ends, where your body says stop and you continue, where your mind says this is too much and you stay anyway. Not because you're trying to prove something, but because you're conditioning yourself to function without the luxury of ideal circumstances. Day 12. Kenji's arms have adapted, barely. He can hammer the large iron for longer stretches now. Not easily, but sustainably. And in that sustainability, something dangerous happens. He starts to think again. Is this really necessary? Am I just being stubborn? There has to be a smarter way. His strikes become half-hearted, not consciously, but the edge is gone. He's going through the motions, but the fire has dimmed. Masamune notices immediately. You're not here anymore. Kenji stops. What do you mean? I'm right here. Your body is here. Your mind is somewhere else. Calculating, judging, protecting yourself from the discomfort. So you've stopped forging and started surviving. And survival is not discipline. Masamune picks up a hammer, joins Kenji. They hammer in silence for an hour, and Kenji notices something. Masamune's strikes are total, not harder, not faster, just complete. Every strike has the full force of his presence behind it. No hesitation, no reservation, no part of him held back. Kenji's strikes, by comparison, are partial. He's swinging the hammer, but he's protecting something. Energy, ego, the right to complain later. How do you do that? Kenji asks. Do what? Put everything into it, every single time. Masamune stops, looks at him. I don't put anything into it. I remove everything that's holding back. Here's the principle. Most people think discipline is about adding force. More effort, more willpower, more intensity. But Masamune knows. Discipline is about removing resistance. The part of you that's protecting comfort. The part that's negotiating with the task. The part that's saving energy for a future that never comes. When you remove that resistance, the work doesn't get harder. It gets pure. Day 18. Kenji is hammering, and for the first time, he feels it. No resistance. Not because the work is easy, but because he's stopped fighting it. His mind isn't calculating how much longer. His body isn't protecting itself. He's just doing. And in that doing, there's a strange kind of peace. Not pleasure, not satisfaction, just alignment. Mind and body moving as one thing. No gap, no negotiation, just strike. Masamune watches this shift, says nothing. But that evening, he speaks. You've passed the second fire. What does that mean? It means you've learned that discipline isn't about feeling strong. It's about being empty enough that strength has no resistance. And the third fire. Masamune is quiet for a long moment. The third fire is when you take what you forged here and return to the world. Why is that hard? Because the world will give you 1,000 reasons to soften, to compromise, to become reasonable again. And if you're not careful, you'll lose everything you've built. Day 25. Kenji finishes the pile of large iron. 30 days of hammering, complete. He expects to feel pride, accomplishment, but he feels nothing, not empty. Not disappointed, just neutral, like he did what needed to be done, and now it's done. Masamune nods. That's the sign. Of what? That you've stopped identifying with the work. It's no longer about you, it's just the work. But here's what Kenji is about to discover. The hardest part of Tanren isn't the physical conditioning. It's what happens when the conditioning is tested by something you can't control. The breaking point. Day 32. A messenger arrives at the workshop. Kenji's father is sick, dying maybe. The family needs him home. Now. Kenji looks at Masamune, conflicted. I have to go. I know. Will the training continue when I return? Masamune doesn't answer immediately. That depends. On what? On whether you remain forged when you leave the forge. Kenji travels home, 3 days on foot. The village is the same, the people are the same, but he feels different, sharper, quieter, less reactive. His father is bedridden, weak, but stable, not dying, just old. Kenji sits with him. They talk. His father asks about the training. How is it? Hard. Good. Easy things don't change people. Day 3 at home. Kenji wakes up late. No hammer waiting. No Masamune watching. He tells himself he'll practice anyway. Maintain the discipline. But he doesn't. He helps his mother, runs errands, talks with old friends, normal things, comfortable things. And slowly, so slowly he doesn't notice, the edge starts to dull. Day 7 at home. Kenji is sitting with friends at a tea house. They're laughing, gossiping, wasting time, and Kenji realizes, I've missed this. The ease, the lack of pressure, the permission to just be without constantly forging something. One of his friends asks, so when are you done with this sword-making thing? When are you coming back? And Kenji feels something shift inside him, a thought he didn't invite. Maybe I don't need to go back. Maybe I've learned enough. Maybe I can find an easier path. That night, Kenji can't sleep, not from guilt, from recognition. He's experiencing exactly what Masamune warned him about, the world softening the forge. It's not that the world is malicious, it's that the world runs on comfort, convenience, and compromise. And the moment you re-enter that world after being forged, it pulls you back. Not through force, through permission. Permission to rest, to be reasonable, to stop being so extreme about everything. And that permission is poison to unbreakable discipline. Oh, day 10 at home. Kenji's father is recovering. There's no reason to stay. But Kenji hesitates. Maybe one more week, just to make sure he's stable. He knows this is a lie. He's not staying for his father. He's staying because going back to the forge means returning to discomfort. And he's retasted comfort, and comfort is addictive. Day 12. Kenji is walking through the market when he sees a swordsmith's stall. Beautiful blades, intricate designs, clearly the work of someone skilled. He asks the smith, "How long have you been forging?" 20 years. "Do you still train, still push yourself?" The smith laughs. "Not like I used to. Once you know the craft, you just maintain. No need to keep suffering for it." And Kenji feels something dangerous settle in his chest. Agreement. Yes. Why keep suffering? I've learned the basics, and I can build from here. I don't need Masamune's extremes. That night, Kenji writes a letter to Masamune. "I've decided to stay home. My father needs me, and I think I can continue the training here in my own way. Thank you for what you taught me." He seals it, prepares to send it in the morning. But he can't sleep, because somewhere deep inside, beneath the rationalizations, beneath the comfort, he knows the truth. He's quitting. Not because the training failed, but because the world offered him a way out, and he's taking it. 3 a.m. Kenji sits in the dark, and he remembers something Masamune said on day 18. The forge doesn't care about your reasons. It doesn't care if you're tired, if you're justified, if you've earned a break. It only cares whether you stay or leave. And the person who stays becomes unbreakable. The person who leaves stays breakable forever. Kenji tears up the letter. Day 13. Kenji says goodbye to his family. His father asks, "You're going back?" "Yes." "Why? You could stay, find easier work, live a normal life." Kenji is quiet for a moment. "Because I don't want to be the person who could have been forged but chose comfort instead." His father smiles. "Then you've already learned the most important thing." Kenji returns to the workshop. Masamune is hammering. Doesn't look up. "You're late." "I know." "You almost didn't come back." "I know." Masamune finally stops. Looks at him. "But you did. And that's the third fire." "What is?" "Choosing to return to the forge when the world has given you every reason not to." Most people survive the first fire, resistance. Some survive the second, competence. But almost no one survives the third, temptation. The temptation to soften, to be reasonable, to accept that good enough is enough. Masamune hands Kenji a new hammer, heavier than the last. "You've been gone 13 days. You're softer now, weaker." Kenji knows it's true. "So we start over?" "No, we go deeper, because now you know what's at stake, and that changes everything." Here's what Kenji learned. Unbreakable discipline isn't forged once. It's forged every single time you choose the forge over comfort. You don't achieve it and then coast. You maintain it by continuously choosing the harder path when the easier one is right there. And the world will always offer you the easier path. Better conditions, more reasonable standards, permission to relax. And every time you take it, you soften. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, invisibly. Until one day you wake up and realize, you're breakable again. But here's the final lesson Kenji is about to learn. The one that separates those who survive the forge from those who become it. The permanent forge day. 47 back at the workshop. Kenji has been forging a single blade for 6 weeks. Folding the steel, hammering, heating, cooling. The same piece of metal, transformed through repetition and fire. And today, Masamune says something unexpected. "It's done." Kenji looks at the blade. It's perfect, balanced, sharp, flawless. He expects to feel pride, accomplishment, but instead, he feels nothing. Not emptiness, just neutrality. Like he did what needed to be done, and now it's complete. "Why don't I feel different?" he asks. Masamune smiles for the first time in months. "Because you are different, and the truly transformed don't feel transformed. They just are." Masamune picks up the blade, examines it. This blade is unbreakable, not because the steel is special, but because it was forged correctly. Through heat, pressure, repetition. The steel didn't want to become a blade. It wanted to stay soft, formless, easy. But the forge didn't care what it wanted. It only cared what it could become. He sets the blade down, looks at Kenji. You're the same. You came here soft, impatient, addicted to comfort. The forge didn't care what you wanted. It only cared what you could become. And now you're unbreakable. Kenji is quiet for a long moment. But what happens when I leave here? When there's no forge? No one watching? That's the final lesson. Masamune walks to the doorway, looks out at the forest. Most people think discipline is something you do in specific conditions, in the gym, in the dojo, in the workshop. But that's not discipline, that's just performance. True discipline, Tanren, is when the forge becomes internal, when you carry it with you, when you are the forge. Here's what Masamune means. Weak discipline requires external structure. You need the gym to work out, the deadline to focus, the accountability to show up. Remove the structure and the discipline collapses. But unbreakable discipline is self-sustaining. You don't need the gym. You train anywhere. You don't need the deadline. You work regardless. You don't need someone watching. You hold yourself to the standard because that's who you are now. The forge isn't a place you visit. It's a state you inhabit. Masamune gives Kenji his final instruction. You're going to leave here tomorrow. Return to your village. Live a normal life. But every morning, before you do anything else, you're going to spend 1 hour doing the hardest thing you can think of. Not the same thing every day. The hardest thing. Some days it'll be physical, some days mental. Some days it'll just be sitting in silence when your mind is screaming for stimulation. But you'll do it. Not because I'm watching, not because anyone will know, but because the forge is yours now. And you don't abandon your forge. Kenji leaves the next morning. No ceremony, no graduation, no certificate. Just walking back to his village, carrying the blade he made and the forge he's become. The first week home, he wakes at dawn, chooses the hardest thing, run 5 miles in the cold. His body resists. His mind offers 1,000 reasons not to. You're tired. You've already proven yourself. 1 day off won't hurt. But he runs anyway, not because he wants to, but because the forge doesn't negotiate. Week 2. The hardest thing. Sit in silence for 1 hour while his mind rages for distraction. No meditation app, no goal, no reward. Just sitting with the discomfort of his own thoughts. His hand reaches for something to do 17 times. 17 times, he stops himself. Not through willpower, through recognition. This is the forge, and I don't leave the forge. Month 3. Kenji's friends notice something different about him. He's unmoved, not cold, not distant, just solid. When they complain, he listens but doesn't join. When they procrastinate, he works. When they look for shortcuts, he takes the long path. Not to prove anything, not to judge them, just because that's who he is now. One day a friend asks, "Why are you like this? Don't you ever just relax?" Kenji thinks about it. I do relax, but I don't soften. What's the difference? Relaxing is recovery, softening is regression. One maintains the forge, the other abandons it. His friend doesn't understand. Kenji doesn't try to explain further, because you can't explain the forge to someone who's never been in it. Year 2. Kenji has become known in the village, not as a swordsmith, but as someone people go to when things are hard, because he doesn't flinch, doesn't panic, doesn't soften under pressure. He's been forged, and forged things don't break when the heat returns. One day, a young man arrives at his door. "I heard you studied under Masamune. I want to learn what you learned." Kenji looks at him, sees himself 5 years ago, eager, impatient, unforged. Why? Because I'm tired of being weak. I start things and don't finish them. I make promises I don't keep. I want discipline. Kenji is quiet for a moment. Discipline isn't something you want. It's something you become by surviving conditions that destroy everyone who enters them with just want. So, will you teach me? No. The young man is stunned. Why not? Because I can't teach you. I can only point you to the forge, and the forge will teach you if you survive it. Kenji writes a letter to Masamune, tells him about the young man. Masamune writes back, Send him to me, but warn him, the forge breaks most people. The few who survive become unbreakable. And the world doesn't know what to do with unbreakable things. Kenji gives the letter to the young man. If you go, you won't come back the same, and you might not come back at all. What do you mean? I mean, the person you are now will die in that forge, and what emerges will be someone you don't recognize. Is it worth it? Kenji looks at him. I don't know. Only you can answer that. But I can tell you this. Everything I've built, everything I've become, everything that matters, came from that forge. And if I hadn't gone, I'd still be the person I was, breakable, weak, controlled by comfort. The young man leaves for Masamune's workshop the next morning. Kenji watches him go and realizes the forge never ends. You don't graduate, you don't finish, you just keep choosing it every day, in small ways and large. Choosing the harder path when the easier one is right there. Choosing discomfort when comfort is available. Choosing to remain forged when the world offers you 1,000 reasons to soften. The last flame. Kenji is 40 now, still wakes at dawn, still chooses the hardest thing, not because he has to, but because the forge is him, and he is the forge. People ask him sometimes, "Don't you ever get tired of being so disciplined?" He used to try to explain. Now he just says, "I'm not disciplined, I'm just unbreakable." And unbreakable things don't get tired, they just are. Here's how this connects to you. Right now, you're living in a world designed to keep you soft. Every convenience, every comfort, every shortcut, they're not evil, they're just conditional. They work until conditions change. And when conditions change, when pressure arrives, when comfort disappears, when you need real discipline, you collapse. Not because you're weak, but because you were never forged. Here's the practice. Tomorrow morning, before you touch your phone, before you check anything, before you ease into your day, do the hardest thing you can think of. Not the most important thing, not the most productive thing, the hardest thing, the thing your mind will scream at you to avoid. Maybe it's a cold shower. Maybe it's sitting in silence. Maybe it's the work you've been procrastinating on for weeks. Doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that it's hard, and you do it anyway. Not because you feel motivated, not because you'll get a reward, but because you're choosing the forge over comfort. Do this every day for 90 days. Different hard things. No repetition, no pattern your mind can predict and prepare for, just daily uncertainty that you face without negotiation. And somewhere around day 40, you'll notice the hard things aren't harder. You're just less breakable. The discomfort hasn't decreased, your resistance to it has. And by day 90, you won't need external structure anymore. You won't need accountability, deadlines, someone watching, because you'll be the forge, and the forge doesn't need permission to burn. Kenji's final letter to Masamune, written at age 60. You told me the forge would break me or make me unbreakable. It did both. It broke the person I was, weak, dependent, controlled by comfort. And it made me unbreakable, not immune to difficulty, but unmoved by it. I carry the forge with me now, and I'll carry it until I die. Thank you for not letting me quit. Masamune never responded, but he didn't need to, because the forge speaks for itself. You're not weak, you're just unforged. And the forge is waiting, not in some distant place, not in some future version of your life. Tomorrow morning, one hard thing, no negotiation, and the day after that, and the day after that, until you stop being someone who tries to be disciplined and become someone who simply is. If this landed, write one word below. The hardest thing you'll do tomorrow.